yourself healthier, stronger, and fitter. And I'm particularly excited about today's call and today's speakers, because the person who's going to set this session off in motion was the first ever person who thought, do you know what? I like the idea of this Fit 20. I would like to take a franchise, and that is none other than Kieran. He's a model and dream franchise. If we could clone him, it would be absolutely perfect. And it's no surprise to me that we hear wonderful things about the way and the care and the effort and the diligence with which you all receive the Fit 20 product. So without any further ado, give Kieran a virtual wave. Lucy, if you want to screenshot it, and let's make him feel welcome. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Neri. Let me just share my screen here so I can try and help myself stick to some sort of focus. So can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen there?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And if you'd be so kind as to hit mute on your microphone, and then if you have questions, just by all means jump in and just unmute yourself. That'd be super helpful. So if you're on the call last week, you'll know that we're running a series of workshops that are just about healthy body, healthy mind. And my focus today, and my kind of co-host, Claire, who's going to be speaking after me, is going to just be sharing a little bit about what we can do to kind of live that kind of healthy body, healthy mind side of things. So if I just kick off with my story for those that don't know me, and if you do know me, you might not even know my backstory, is that, you know, I've got a strong affiliation with exercise now. That wasn't always the case. So just finishing up from college, just felt like I'd kind of gone off the rails, lost my direction in life, didn't really have any great deal of purpose, and started hanging around with certain types of people, not getting into massive trouble, but not really getting anything done in my life. And it got to a stage where I wasn't really looking after myself. I didn't feel particularly healthy, late nights, not looking after what I ate, not really exercising. And that had a really negative effect on how I felt day to day, but also how I showed up. So my confidence was down, didn't feel particularly great about myself. And I knew I was disappointed about how I'd let my life slide. So I got to a point where I'd really hit rock bottom and got to a stage really where I felt like enough was enough, and that I needed to take back some sort of control. And that started for me with exercise. I'd obviously heard that exercise was good. I'd exercised when I was young growing up, but I just hadn't attended to it. So started getting back into exercise, started feeling better, started eating more healthily, getting more sleep. And really it was like a cloud was lifted. I felt so much better. And in terms of confidence, I actually liked going out and seeing people rather than being sort of reclusive and not getting out. And it inspired me to really get into the fitness industry and start helping people. So that went on for a number of years. And initially I was kind of talking to people about, you know, change your life, exercise 5 days a week, you know, change your diet, you need to do all this stuff. And I realized that not everyone is in a position or has the motivation to really overhaul their life, which is one big reason why Fit 20 was so appealing to me, because it was just a really quick and efficient way to make small changes to your life that will have a really big impact. So I was really excited to be able to help the large percent of the population that maybe weren't going to overhaul their life like I did. So yeah, I want to focus today really on the physical benefits of what exercise can do, but the kind of mental impacts that can have as well. And just a quick look at the stats so that we know that this is like something we need to pay attention to, that 1 in 4 of us will experience mental health problem of some kind each year in England, and that's from mind.org. So, you know, when we look at a room full of 20 people, I know I don't want to do the math here. So 1 in every 4 of us is basically going to be struggling with that. And 1 in 6 in England report experiencing a common mental health problem like anxiety and depression in any given week. So these are challenges that we face that are really common, and all of us or someone close to us is going to be really affected by that. And that's why I feel like any tools that we have at our disposal to make an impact on this is super valuable. So one of the biggest tools I feel like we've got in our armory is exercise. It can have a huge impact on not only how physically our body works, but also our mental health as well. But you guys all know that, right? Is there anyone here who is kind of unsure about the benefit of exercise? No, it looks like we're all on board. So yeah, what exercise, so a question I'd love to ask, what exercise works best to reduce stress and improve mood? That's something I want to dive into today. But before I kind of go any further here, I'd love to hear from you guys in what exercise, what you think your answer to that would be. What exercise works best to reduce stress and improve well-being? So please feel free to hold up your hand, and either myself or Lucy will go ahead and unmute you. So Claire, was that a hand or a no, don't?
Yeah, it was a hand. I think something that something that you enjoy would be my first point.
Yeah. So something you enjoy, that's brilliant. Has anyone else got something to add to what exercise is going to work best? Andy, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself for that.
Well, in my daughter, when she had post-traumatic stress, she used to go out running, but in the end, she found her weight training actually helped better than the actual running, because it gave her more focus.
It's interesting. So weight training, great. Thanks, Andy. Any other kind of things I can add to my list here of what works best? Penny, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, for me, it's a really good walk, as well as my time at Fit 20, of course. But it's a good walk, communing with nature, I suppose. That always lifts my mood.
Yeah, brilliant. Walk in nature. So you would have liked my first shot, which was out in the Peak District. One of the only times that I've managed to haul Liz, my wife, up on the mountaintop for that photo, and then never again. That was it. Any other questions here for activity? So I've got weight training, something that you enjoy, a good walk in nature. Any other experiences of what type of exercise is best to reduce stress and improve well-being? One more, and then I've got my trio. Yes, John, go for it.
Yeah, well, I was going to second anything outdoors, which I'm kind of struggling with what to do in the winter to replace that. But I like outdoor swimming, so sort of water and outdoors combination is good. But that's more mental relief rather than exercise necessarily. Yeah,
and that's what this is about, I guess. So yeah, being outdoors and you know, hat off to you, John, that being outdoors in the water as well, that's like, whew, I'm just cold thinking even about that. That's brilliant. Okay, so let me hit mute here. So yeah, just like a little bit of the sciencey stuff. I'm not going to bore you to death with this, but just know that there's a number of studies that have been around exercise and the correlation between exercise and the benefits of it in relationship to general mental health. So as I was kind of looking through the stats here, one of the things that popped up was it was very much looking at the aerobic and more general physical activity and the correlation between how much someone does and the mental health. So study number one looked at the relationship between physical activity and general mental health, and it showed a dose-response relationship between the physical activity and better mental health. So basically, between the parameters of 2 hours a week and up to 7 hours a week, there were good benefits from. Now that sounds like a lot, right? 7 hours a week of general physical activity. It sounds like, yeah, this is all great science. Thanks very much. But you know, who is going to be able to work, have a livelihood, familyhood, etc., 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 and maintain this amount of that physical activity? It's really hard to do. So if I could just share a story of, I'm going to call him Mr. Smith. It's just someone who's fresh on my mind. He came in earlier this week, and he was wanting to be fitter, healthier, get back into feeling good about himself, his physical ability, and his body. And you know, he's over 50. He's got these aches and pains that he's picked up along the line. And he was struggling because, you know, when I said, well, what have you done in the past? And he said, you know, I used to go to the gym 5 days a week. I was doing like aerobic exercise on the bike, on the treadmill, on the cross trainer. I was doing some weights, but now I can't go. I can't do that amount. And it's really, you know, the thing that I use to stay in shape and look after my physical and mental health as well, I can no longer do to the same degree. And he was just at a bit of a dead end because he had aches and pains. So running and activities like that were just no good for him anymore. So he was a bit of stuck in like, what can I do to improve my health and my fitness and look after my body? I know I need to do something, but all this other stuff hurts and I don't have the time to be able to spend doing it. So there is good news that if you don't like cardiovascular exercise or particularly structured exercise, or if you don't like getting out and doing activities of daily living, walking, hiking, etc., then strength training also works. So just one of the many studies that I was reviewing when I was putting this presentation together, that it looked at the association of resistance training, resistance exercise with just depressive symptoms. And the findings were really that resistance exercise training was associated with a significant reduction in depressive symptoms. And this is great news because like, it means that so many different forms of activity and exercise can have a really strong impact on our physical health, yet we know, but also mental health as well. So if you don't like running or cardiovascular activity, or you find in the winter it's hard to get out and about and do the activities that you like doing, then there's resistance training is like a strong contender for something that I highly advocate and recommend people find a way to do. And we'll talk about different ways to do that perhaps in a moment. So why am I such a big fan of resistance training? Just simply because strength changes absolutely everything. First of all, you don't have to do a great amount of strength training for it to have a really big impact on our lives, but it changes like how we look in terms of muscle tone, body composition. It changes how we feel in terms of energy levels, in terms of neurological health, in terms of mental clarity. And it changes what we can do as well. So in terms of being able to keep up with the family on physical activities, be able to do the activities that we love to do, to go out hiking, like strength impacts all those things. So that's why I'm super passionate about, like, if someone says, what's the one type of exercise that you recommend most, it's strength exercise, and that's no secret. Another reason that it's good is because muscles talk. So anytime that you do intensive effort, your muscles, they're not just kind of passive bystanders to move your body, they actually act like a gland. So they produce something called myokines, which then act globally throughout your body. They also help stimulate the production of growth factors like brain-derived neurotrophic factor, so BNF for short, and insulin-like growth factor. Now, these are two things that are really important for our brain and our neurological health. So when we do intensive effort work, our body then secretes these growth factors and myokines, and that has like a positive effect on cell growth rather than cell death, which is what generally over time is happening within our brain. We want to put that off for as long as possible, right? So intensive effort means your body's going to be producing these great substances that are good for our body, absolutely, but also for our brain. And this counts for any type of exercise, really, whether it's strength exercise, whether it's cardiovascular exercise, whether it's getting out walking in nature, whether it's swimming, whatever you're doing, it's a great opportunity to practice mindfulness and being present with where you're at. Like in the way that we train here at the studio, then we're always like focusing on elements of what we're doing, so the breathing and the posture, and being present in the moment and not trying to like let your mind wander all over the place. So when you're doing exercise or activity, it's a great opportunity to practice that mindfulness, which will help reduce the stress and also increase your well-being. And when you're training and exercising with a reasonable level of intensity, you can't really think about that report that's overdue at work, that stressful situation that's going on with family. Like, you have to just focus on what's going on right in front of you. And in doing so, it just gives you a bit of a distraction, albeit for a short term, from the kind of stresses and strains that we're facing in life, which is really, I think, really valuable. And then exercise, and particularly intensive exercise, it helps you develop resilience. So it just gets us used to being like carrying on in the face of incredible discomfort. So I know if I'm exercising, it's becoming very uncomfortable. One of my team is encouraging those last little efforts. I'm thinking I can't do any more, but actually, lo and behold, I can do more, and my body can do much more, and I'm much more capable than I think I am. And that just helps with day-to-day life as well. That carries over. And I've got a picture of the bamboo there because have you guys well, Liz has basically imported some bamboo into our back garden, and like no matter how windy, rainy, whatever's going on, like it always is just resilient. It always just, no matter what, it's like it's back there. So it's just absolutely amazing, and that's what I think exercise and building up a strong mindset can help do. And then, and I always wanted to, like, for those, I know a number of you guys already do strength training, which is awesome. For those that don't do any strength exercise or don't know really where to start with it, there's 3 ways that I'd probably recommend. And like the first one would be a simple one is to join a local gym, request an induction with one of the instructors. They'll just tell them you want to do some strength training, and they'll show you as part of your membership really how to use the equipment and how to start doing strength exercise safely. And that's one way to just get started with incorporating strength exercise in your routine. Because I don't want you to see this and think, yeah, okay, I want to do strength exercise, but then go away and take no action. Like, it's super important to like actually do something. If this resonates with you, if you're struggling with finding a way of exercising and that works for you. The second way could be to invest in some weights or some equipment at home, and that's been really pertinent in the last 4, 5, 6 months. Getting some weights that you can use at home, and hire a trainer. They'll come around and they'll be able to show you how to strength train safely, that you don't have to hire them for the rest of your life. You can just get the basics and just get a little bit of a head start with knowing what to do. And they'll be able to teach you how to lift safely, whether that's in person or via something like this, via Zoom. And then third, obviously, you can request a free introductory training at your local Fit20 studio. So there's more of these little studios popping up all over the place. And even if you just want to understand a bit more about resistance training and how to do strength training safely, that's a really kind of an easy way to learn what I believe is like the best way to do strength exercise and the most time efficient way. So there's no cost to try that apart from 20, 40 minutes of your time. But then you can use what you learn in whatever activity that you decide to roll with. And if you already do strength train regularly, then great, high five, because it's for me the #1 form of exercise that has the biggest impact on the biggest number of people. So yeah, if you do already strength training, absolutely keep it going, because like this is something that we need for our physical health and our mental health, like long term. And it's really important to keep progressing as well. So if you find that you're going through the motions a little bit and you're just doing the same as you did last week and the week before and month before, that's okay. To get best results, like a number of these growth factors and the things that affect our mind and our brain, are only released when we stimulate our muscles to a certain degree, when we reach a certain level of intensity, and that's what hits the button for our body to then respond by producing all these great hormones, myokines, and growth factors, etc. So in short, if you're already doing strength training, always progress and then try and go right up to the limit of what you're capable of doing. That will give you the biggest return, and you don't necessarily have to spend more time to do that. So yeah, right at the beginning, I just asked what exercise works best to reduce stress and improve mood. And I think Claire like stole my thunder there at the beginning. So well done, Claire, you just nailed that. And Penny and John, and whatever you're most likely to do and whatever you're most likely to stick to, because it doesn't matter about all of these different forms of exercise, how effective they are. It doesn't matter about strength training. It doesn't matter about going out for walks in nature, playing tennis. If you don't actually manage, if you don't do them because you don't enjoy them or they're too time consuming, it's really hard to stick to that. So I'd love for each of us to take a moment and just think like, what's the activity that, yes, I'm motivated to do exercise and be structured with it. What's the activity that I could see myself doing and sustaining for like the long term, at least for now. And if I can just wrap up by saying like, what is good for you now and you enjoy now isn't necessarily what you're going to want to be doing in 3 years' time. And it's not going to be what you might have enjoyed doing 3 years ago. So again, from a conversation with Liz, you can see where most of my great ideas come from, like her brain basically. She was saying, like she used to go kickboxing and it served a great purpose for a long period of her life. She met a great friend that she's still friends with to this day. But the idea of doing it now is like, not so keen. So what worked for you in the past might not be what will work for you now. So they're just some thoughts that I've had around like exercise and the hard time that we give ourselves for not doing what we've maybe done in the past. Just it might not be relevant anymore. So I'm going to just wrap up here with a quick summary that, yeah, most exercise has a positive impact on our mental health, so long as we do it consistently. So yeah, if you can roll with something that you enjoy and you like doing, if you are up for it, I'd say get resistance training, strength training into your life on a regular basis, and know that it's great for if you're busy, if you don't like cardiovascular or other types of exercise, or if you've got injuries that mean that you can't do high impact exercise or you can't do repetitive movements, then resistance training is like a really safe and controlled way to make improvements, improve your physical health and your mental health also, to help safeguard that. And then the worst, better, best, like if you're getting stressed about trying to fit all this exercise in, like just dial it back to what is going to be manageable for you. So if you want to go for like, this last story is just when I was trying to walk to work, like it makes a big difference to me if I can manage to walk to work. And I was just like, when we moved to the studio to Farsley, it was an extra 30 minutes from home. So I was saying, oh, I can't really walk to work anymore. And I know it's really important to me. And lo and behold, guess who managed to make a recommendation that, you know what, why don't you just drive a bit of the way? If you can't, you can't walk all the way, why don't you just drive some of the way and then walk the rest of it? And I was like, oh yeah, this is a good idea. But I had never thought of it. And that's that whole worst, better, best thing in practice. So now I drive most of the way, park up at the top, and then I get maybe a 10 or 15 minute stroll. If I've got more time and I can do more, great, I'll walk all the way. But it wasn't until someone else pointed out to me that you don't have to do like everything that you could do. You don't have to do the best. Like what's the in between? How do you kind of find that your level on that scale? So with that, thank you so much for showing up. I'm going to pass back control to someone else, and hopefully found that valuable there.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Kieran. That was fantastic. Really, really insightful. Just a couple of points that I noted down. I thought that just finding the right exercise that works for you, I think, is so important. And just keeping going, keep progressing, hitting those next milestones, I think is really great for us as well. And just that point about resilience as well. Just pushing through those uncomfortable moments that you don't want to do, but it's just really great for us in the long term. So thank you so much for that. That was really good. Has anyone got any questions at this point that they'd like to share or ask Kieran? Or we can come back at the end if you've got any more thoughts. Looks like we're all good for the moment. Okay, so I'm gonna pass on to Claire, and I'll let her give you a little bit of backstory about who she is and how she is going to kind of help us today. Thanks, Claire.
Hi everyone. As you can see, my name is Claire Downham, and I'm going to speak to you today about understanding stress. And you might have been to talks before that are about managing stress. And I'm hoping by the end of this talk, you'll understand why I speak very differently about this particular subject. So I have a background in education. And in fact, until March the 31st, 2015, I was a head teacher in a primary school in West Leeds in Pudsey. On that day, I went to work, took one look at my computer, walked out and never went back. And I did, in fact, have adrenal burnout, which means I'd been so stressed for such a long time that I actually broke my adrenal gland. I bet you didn't know you could actually do that, did you? So I was physically and emotionally absolutely finished off. And actually, it took a year before I could face even resigning from work, which I then did. Very bizarrely, 10 days after that, I got an email about training to be a hypnotherapist. So for the past few years, I've been working with hypnotherapy, and now I work more with coaching than hypnotherapy. So what I'd like you to do while I speak to you today is just to listen with a really open mind. I want you to listen a bit like the way you listen to music. You might want to jot some things down, but it's best to just listen. Just be open to hear something new that you may not have heard before. So I think that society now has a really interesting view of stress. You only have to look at the news or LinkedIn or Facebook or anywhere else to see that there is a view that some aspects of life are inherently stressful. So things like having a big workload, certain job roles. I know when I used to tell people I was a head teacher who burnt out, they absolutely said that was because of my job. Oh, teaching's very stressful, isn't it? Was the kind of thing people said. Certain events in our life are viewed as being stressful. So moving house, getting married, getting divorced, both of those bizarrely are very stressful. All those things they have a label of being stressful. But isn't it interesting that there really is a difference amongst us in terms of the things we find stressful? So for example, some people find goals and targets really stressful. I'm not a very goal and targety person. I don't really connect with that kind of thing. But for some people, goals and targets are like the best thing ever. They're motivating, they're energizing. They absolutely love to have loads of goals and targets. They're not for me. But isn't it interesting how people relate to those things in different ways? And if you speak to doctors about stress, they will tell you that even those doctors that have studied stress, psychologists and psychiatrists and the like, have not found anything consistent in terms of what causes stress. And have you noticed how you can be in a movie theatre with a load of other people and everybody's reacting differently to that movie? We feel differently about things to other people, don't we? And right now in the world, there's one thing going on and 7.8 billion different experiences of that one thing. Why is that? Why is it that we all have this unique experience? You'll understand more as I go through this talk. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the sciencey bit of stress. Actually, what is stress? So stress is caused by having too much of certain hormones in your bloodstream. And those hormones have a very different role out there in nature. So the hormones I'm talking about are things like adrenaline and cortisol, which you probably have heard of, which if left hanging around in the human body have a real detrimental effect on our health. So I'm going to tell you a little story about a zebra. So the zebra's on the savannah minding his own business, chewing the grass. And of course, who's round the corner? David Attenborough with his camera and a lion, obviously. So the lion goes after the zebra. And of course, in that moment, the zebra's mission is to get out of the way. We're in the fight. The zebra's clearly not going to fight the lion. So he's in flight mode and off he goes. At that time, there is adrenaline and cortisol and glucose pumping around that zebra's body at 100 miles an hour. And the purpose of that is to get the zebra's muscles stronger and ready to get away as fast as possible. That's the point of the adrenaline and the cortisol and the other things that are going on in the zebra's body. Now, it's the zebra's lucky day today. David Attenborough must be watching because the zebra gets away and off he goes. The lion kind of doesn't get any food just now, but I'm sure he'll find something later. No, it's the lady lions actually, isn't it? It's not the male lion. So the zebra goes off to the savannah, and the zebra does not spend the rest of the day panicking about the arrival of the next lion. Oh my God, when's the next lion going to come? What am I going to do? What about my children? My baby's only little. I'm not going to be able to get him out of the way. And all this thinking about the zebra within 15 minutes has forgotten about the lion. All its vital signs have set back down to normal, and you have one chilled zebra back on the savannah munching the grass. Human beings don't quite work like that, you may have noticed. Human beings have the capacity to create that level of adrenaline and cortisol and everything else pumping into our bloodstream just through the power of thinking about things that are frightening. And because humans don't regularly experience clear and present danger, because I don't know about you, Kieran, but I've not spotted a lion running up and down Farsley Town Street recently. I think that would have made it into the Farsley community Facebook group, wouldn't it? Along with all the other noise about sheds being broken into. But that's just not happening. So none of us have been out and about and really experienced clear and present danger. I know there's a kind of underlying fear thing going on at the moment, but actually most of us do not have to be actually frightened of things. We do not have to flee from things or fight things. Our adrenaline usually comes into play when we are thinking about things. Isn't that interesting? And so going back a little bit to what Kieran said, that's part of the reason why, you know, some of the people I work with who suffer from stress and anxiety issues, they run. And the part of the reason running works for that is because you're burning off that adrenaline that kind of had a job to do. It needed you to run away from a lion. Well, there's no lion, but you can run with the Farsi flyers or the Pudsey Pacers or whoever, and you can get rid of that adrenaline. It can feel better from doing something like running. So those symptoms of stress that people are suffering from, and they're saying now that 70% of illness in this country, and worldwide in fact, is caused by or contributed to by stress. And it's caused because we are carrying around this ton of adrenaline in our systems that is not supposed to be there. Adrenaline's supposed to be in your system for a few minutes every 72 hours. Not day in, day out, because you've got a big workload or a load of emails to tackle or a boss who's a little bit difficult. That is not what those hormones are for. And when they hang around in our bodies, they make us sick. Cortisol causes your weight gain around your middle, which obviously is not where you want to have weight gain, because then it's around your organs and it's really not good for you. And of course, I could sit here and list the symptoms of stress, the consequences of having too much of these hormones in your body, but I'm sure you know what they are. So what you end up with then is this amazing self-development industry that talks about managing stress, that there is something there for us to try and control and try and do something about and try and manage. And guess what, folks? That puts a load more stuff in your head and a load more things on your plate. If you are trying to manage those things that you think are causing you to be stressed, you are going to be spending a lot of time managing things that are probably not yours to manage. And even if you're trying to manage your state all the time, trying to do positive thinking, trying to force yourself to be okay, it can actually get a little bit tiring. It can actually just mean that you've got more on your plate than you could ever need to have. And have you noticed that when you get a bit of quiet, and I loved what Kieran said about the mindfulness of exercise, when you get a bit of quiet in your life, when you have those mindful moments, life just seems a lot easier. And did you know they did a study of entrepreneurs recently where they found that entrepreneurs had their best ideas in the shower, playing golf, when they were doing some kind of exercise, when they were just playing with the kids, when they were on holiday, when they were not thinking about those things that were on their plate. All those best ideas come to us when our mind is quiet. But there is a whole industry out there trying to fill us up with ideas of how to be better and how to control everything, and including our own minds. And this, I liken this to the medical, not the medical industry, to medicine really. So back in the day when surgeons first started chopping bits of people off, it was, if you were a really good surgeon, you had a filthy, dirty apron, filthy, dirty hands, and filthy, dirty instruments. It was a badge of honour. The more of other people's intestines you had on your front, the better surgeon you were. And they had a bit of a problem because people would survive the operating theatre, if you want to call it that. I don't think it was quite an operating theatre like we recognise now. They'd get all stitched up and a few days later they'd die of a horrible infection. And back then, the surgeons kept looking outside for the solution to this. So they thought it was caused by something called a miasma, which is basically a bad smell. So they would burn things and they'd have lavender everywhere and they'd be sprinkling things to try and get rid of the smell. And they tried all sorts of things. Meanwhile, of course, they still had filthy, dirty aprons and instruments and hands. So Then somebody towards the end of the 19th century, I can never remember the guy's name, but he came up, he discovered that the thing that was happening was that people were getting germs into their bloodstream, and that was what was making them sick. And after some reluctance, when he finally got the surgeons to start washing themselves, their equipment and their aprons and everything else, all of a sudden, all those infections disappeared. And of course, our entire system of medicine now is built on that principle. That is now a principle of medicine. It is a principle that germs exist. And I think we've got a self-development industry that's still a bit like those dirty surgeons, in that we're looking outside all the time for the solutions. We're trying lots of things to fix people. But all of this is working with a misunderstanding of how human experience is actually created. Human experience is created from the inside out. And most of the world think that it's the other way round. And our stress and a lot of our pain and a lot of our mental illness is caused by this misunderstanding. It's caused by a misunderstanding of where our experience is coming from. 100% of our experience, and therefore 100% of our experience of stress and anxiety and everything else, comes from thought in the moment. And I can guess what you're thinking. You mean nothing outside of us is really there? No, I'm not that woo-woo. But I'm just saying that this mug is real. It's in my hand and it's definitely here. But you and I will all have a different experience of this mug. This mug has a lot of meaning to me. My fiance bought it for me, and I love butterflies and I love the colour, and often it'll have my favourite drink in it. So it means something to me. I'm taking this mug into me through my thinking. You will all be having a different experience of this mug, because you're you and I'm me. And we all have different thinking moment by moment. And that's why when you're in that cinema, you will experience that film in a different way. Have you ever sat with the other half in a movie and then come out at the end and you've both it's like you've been in a different movie to each other? It's completely different. If you've got young children, you'll know how when they're really little, they get caught up in a movie and they get frightened. You've got to reassure them it's okay, it's not real, it's not real. And eventually they get that it's not real. And then we can enjoy movies as adults knowing that we're actually okay. Everybody is relating to the world differently. That's why this idea that certain things are inherently stressful just isn't right. And because those things outside of us do not have that adrenaline in a syringe that they can pop into our bloodstream, they can't possibly be creating those feelings inside us. We think we are cameras looking out at the world and taking a snapshot as we go through life, but we're actually projectors. Even colours are experienced by, if every single person in this meeting would experience colours in a different way, we don't know how each other are experiencing them unless you live with somebody who's colourblind like me, where purple is blue and blue is purple and goodness knows what else. But we're all experiencing that differently. And that connection between our thoughts and our feelings, it's like they're two sides of the same coin. Just try for a moment to have a happy thought and a sad feeling at the same time. It's just not possible. And so what we tend to do in life when we think it's outside in is we try continually to change the outside world to make things better for us. We don't like the weather, so then we don't have a good day. We don't like the way somebody speaks to us, so then we think that's causing us to not feel okay. And a lot of things are outside of our control at the moment. But when you realise that well-being is innate to you and that comes from inside of you, it actually makes life an awful lot easier, and it means you can own and be empowered in terms of your own well-being. So what's to do here, you might be asking? Because this understanding that I'm sharing with you today is like gravity. If you've ever been around little children, you'll know they throw things, don't they, and drop things. And it's because, and I used to think my kids were being really naughty when they did that. Why, it's funny, isn't it? They're sat on the high chair and they keep dropping things and you keep getting up and they think it's hysterical. And you're like, this is just not funny. But actually, they're just investigating because they don't understand gravity yet. By the age of 4 or 5, that child has an embodied understanding of gravity. And they no longer do that because they don't want to have broken toys. And you and I know, we just know to put the mug on the table and not drop it from a great height. We don't think, oh, I've got to remember there's gravity, I must put the mug down. We just do that automatically. And as I work with people over time and they become more deeply embodied into this understanding, that just becomes automatic. It becomes a deep embodied understanding. Because today, unless you've had a really big insight, which you might have had, it will feel like an intellectual thing. Yeah, she's saying thought creates my reality, but what am I to do about that? And the other thing to know about your thoughts as well, and why this whole thing about trying to control your thoughts and manipulate them often doesn't work, is that thoughts are random. You've probably noticed that. Have you ever been just doing something and then a random thought appears in your head from a week last Tuesday and you just think, well, why's that appeared? Some thoughts we can just let go of. Other thoughts seem much more serious and real and something we've got to do about, particularly about the outside world. Have you ever had a thought that you need to eat some chocolate? I have that one all the time. And then you have this conversation with yourself, don't you? Well, do you know, if you eat the chocolate, Claire, you're going to have to go for a longer walk tomorrow and you're going to feel rubbish and you're going to feel guilty. And you know what? You deserve the chocolate anyway. And by the time I've had an argument with myself about the thought about chocolate, guess what I've done? Eaten the flipping chocolate, of course. When we try to manipulate and change our thoughts, actually we just get more of the same thoughts as a rule. And it's similar with a thought about exercise. Who can talk themselves out of exercising? Come on, I know you can. Even Kira's nodding his head. We can all sometimes talk ourselves out of doing those things that are good for us, or you know, not doing the things that are good for us and doing the things that are not so good for us. But what if you knew that thoughts were constructions, not instructions? They all just pop in our heads and we have a choice. As one of my teachers always says, you don't have to think that. So although there's no manipulation, there is a choice to follow the instructions that thought is giving, or realize that it's actually constructed by some random wiring and firing of your brain neurons. So I'm nearly finished now. I would love to talk to any of you after this if you want to find out more about this. This understanding has taken me to a place of peace that I really never thought was actually possible. It's like being in a state of meditation all the time. And who doesn't need a little bit more inner peace? So the takeaways I'm going to leave you with today. Just remind yourself when you feel like things are getting a little bit too much, and it feels like your experience of life is coming from outside, that 100% of your experience is being created through thought in the moment. And in that moment, there will be some thinking going on that is creating your feelings. And use your feelings as a dashboard. You know you have to watch the dashboard in your car, don't you? Or you end up breaking down. Your feelings are telling you that your thinking has gone off. They are not telling you there is something going on in the outside world. You don't have to avoid going and doing something because you think that feeling is coming from the outside world. It's just some thinking that's gone out of kilter. And finally, remember that those thoughts, they are not instructions. They're constructions. Thank you. I hope you found that helpful.
Thank you so much, Claire. That was really insightful. It was, a lot to think about there. I think everyone is going to be digesting that for the rest of the afternoon and maybe the weekend. But that's really fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And hopefully everyone found that really useful. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to pop your hand up now, or if you'd like to drop me or me an email afterwards, I can send it on to either Kieran or Claire, and I'm sure that they will come back to you separately. I'm going to follow up with an email with everyone's contact details. This has also been recorded, so I will send around a copy if you want to re-watch any of that those bits back. We've got next week, we've got another webinar, same time, which is about time to rest. So we've got Duncan from Fit20 Exeter, waving there, and Kate Guest, who's a specialist on sleep and all things restful. So we're going to have that next week. So it would be really lovely to see some of you back for that. Just to ask Neri if he's got any final thoughts or words that he'd like to share with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. Lots of thoughts, and Claire, you know, there's lots of thoughts, right? I want to thank you, Kieran, for your presentations. Really practical, down-to-earth approach, information to help everybody move forwards. And the thing I've taken away from what you've shared, Kieran, is, you know, the best form of exercise is the one you get to do and stick with, or manage to get done. And Claire, that was absolutely fantastically delivered. It can become a very confusing subject for people, I think, delving into things related to the mind, but you presented that in a really accessible and understandable way. And my takeaway from it is that we experience the world not because something's happening to us, but because of how we perceive it internally, which is a very simple but profound and powerful and transformative insight, if, as and when we grasp that. So thank you. Thank you for joining us. And to each and every one of you for being on the call. I'm sure you will have your own takeaways and insights from what was shared today. And I hope it's able to help you improve the quality of what you do for the rest of the day and moving forward. And I just want to say, for next week's talk, how many of you, if you've had a bad night's sleep, find that your day doesn't go as well? Show of hands. Okay, so how many of you know people that you wish somebody you knew had a better night's sleep, because that day not going well has an impact on you in not so good a way? Yeah, if they're not around, you can put your hand up. So please share the information with them and get yourself onto that call, because we will have, again, some fantastic information for you. I want to thank Lucy for putting this together. And once again, if you can give a great big wave to Kieran and Claire for doing such a lovely job and adding tons of value. Thank you.
Thanks, Neri. Thanks, everyone, and have a really great day, and hope to see you next week. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.